there we go. A new location this week for myself. Got some art behind me. Innovation Works back in London. It's a lovely place to be. Seeing some familiar faces, some friends from a long time. It's such an inspiring place. And ನೇಹal and I were talking about it. You miss bumping into people just on accident. Saying, hey, how's it going? I forget how to talk to people in person, but it was still glad to have the opportunity to at least try. We have three of us here today. 𝗕𝗏 might appear, he might not. He is roving and preparing for a trip back to India. Trip back to India means a lot of gifts. And so he did a Vaughan trip and somewhere else. He went to the Outlet Mall. I thought he was going to come back just with full stuff. And he had like 3 things. So he was like, I've done 5%. He considered it an abject failure. But we're here today. We've got some topics, some good stuff to go about. We're coming off a hot security meeting around GDPR and all these wonderful things. So lots of good things to think about there. Probably won't delve into that too much, to be honest today. That was a lot. That was enough of it already. But some really good things about just building the best practices into your system, ethics of AI, and really just treating data with the utmost care in a world that has it endlessly flowing. So I'm 𝗕𝗏 I am CEO of 𝗕liche. I do love data. I love data visualization. I love helping people solve problems. Very interested in how, what can we learn from, large amounts of interviews or conversations, or even, writing that we're doing ourselves personally. So I'm spending a lot of time on that work, and I'll let you guys make a quick intro here.
This is Lauren. I am the accountant here, and doing lots of work apparently in security now, especially the last couple hours. It was a very nice presentation we had to go through.
Always a struggle to hit that unmute button. Yeah, so ನೇಹal, digital strategist here at 𝗕liche. Currently obsessing on workflows and how to best execute and plan for them. So that's kind of where my headspace is at currently.
Okay, ನೇhal, you've got a couple of topics here. Anyone that you want to dial in from the start and then go after?
I feel like it's pretty much in order. So if we were to start, just because I think after a quick chat this morning, just back to the same time old topic we get to discussing. But I was thinking maybe, gamifying it a little bit, where it's like, if, obviously our platform and software can cater to multiple groups. And there's various use cases that we can use our platform for. But, if you had to pick one, just one, no ifs and buts, just one, which, what would the main target audience be? And I guess why that would be the target audience you would choose to go after hard.
Silence. I like it. I like you put a lot of emphasis on one. I'll talk about quickly, a couple of things, and then I'll try to get to my answer, which is, one thing I think which is really interesting, is even part of it plays into what we were talking about today with security, which is, what kind of data do you want to deal with, and what kind of customers do you want to have, and what does that process, look like, and what are the consequences or the responsibilities when you deal with that information. And from my perspective, that starts to have a factor on who the main people that you want to deal with is. And the other part that I think is really, interesting is like what, got some good feedback from one of my friends who has followed us for a long time. It's just like, talk to Spock about the pain point that you're solving, or what's the mission, the mission that you're rallying around, and how do you, articulate that mission so that so that employees know, that customers know, and investors know. And sometimes there's problems that are much larger and more significant than others. And so, it's not necessarily easy, but when there's a challenge, like, for example, climate change, or a challenge like mental health, I've seen people be able to, raise investment. I've seen people, like a lot of power in that very specific mission. And then, for myself, it was just, talk about this a little bit, but this NLP summit that happened this week, it was just so, it was very specific. Like you realize how deep, for example, the healthcare NLP actually goes. So the knowledge that you need to have, the experience that you need to have. And in a way, it's, while I know technology and I know what we're doing, there's a deeper level of knowledge and understanding, and also a deeper expertise in applying that technology and verticalizing it into those places. So this is a long way of saying, like, where there's something I feel most comfortable about or with, where do I'm most passionate about. Obviously, I have a lot of passion for mental health, things like climate change and things like that. But at the end, I find the intersection of language to be a very creative thing. And so one thing I would, truly love to see with our system is that people are taking this language information they have, whether it's, again, conferences or podcasts or whatever it is, and actually sharing it publicly so that they could, our system could ingest something and make something beautiful out of it. And that we actually see people think that that's compelling or beautiful or powerful enough that they actually want to share it publicly. So that's like a big drive for me. I think it makes some of our adoption of our system easier because, again, maybe marketers, content creators, media companies are willing to move quicker on those things. And because the media is going to be public in the end, they're going to share something from it. There's less stress about the data sensitivity and what that stuff is. And, from my own experience in life, I had run a marketing agency. And so I know that space well. When I talk to those people, I can communicate well. I have a lot of passion for it and the need to continue to grow the awareness of what you're doing, repurpose content, use media and make more media from it is not going to end anytime soon. So that's where I'll stop for a second.
Sure. I would say, yeah, healthcare, mental health care seems like a more like noble pursuit in my mind. It seems like the work that you're doing is going to actually benefiting people a lot more. Just when it comes to like marketing, it's mostly just about making more money. But healthcare really does make some sort of some impact to people's lives for the better. But that's just me. It's a bit biased, and there's probably different reasons beyond just like what is emotionally attaching.
Actually delved in, I spent a lot of time and, we continue, like, ಮಿಹಾಲ್ sort of forced us to pick one here, obviously. So I tried to sort of coincide with that. And one thing I actually found, which was really interesting, which is, marketing and media is sort of like considered a dirty space. And maybe that's true, especially with the level of analytics and behavioral tracking and all these things. One thing I found, or what I realized as I delved deeper into, I would say, like digital therapeutics, mental health, some of the conversations we had specifically around psychedelics was when you merge, for example, healthcare and I would say business together, there's a lot of, I don't know, I have a lot of fear around that too. And it's like, people sort of know marketing or media or content generation is what it is. But what I don't think people necessarily understand that, behind the scenes within healthcare, there's a lot of things that are taking place that maybe if we knew that we wouldn't be so excited about. So I try to figure that out. And also just trying to figure out, where can you make the biggest impact yourself personally? For myself, like mental health care is obviously something I've been very passionate about, but I also think that there's like a level of creation or, joy with some of the work that we're doing around sort of the media analysis and visualization that is just like, that's just a wonderful thing to be able to unlock that creativity into the world. So I do appreciate that a lot too. ಮಿಹಾಲ್, you, sir.
And if, just as a follow-up, if you were to frame that question in the scope of our existing business model and our existing, I guess, customers, would your answer change?
I think, like the other piece that I see, which is more, and maybe this doesn't answer your question, is the more generalized application of this, which is I would say that the digestion or ingestion of media libraries or media assets, and the analysis part. So to me, the analysis part is what I'm most passionate about, and the fact that it's providing value is what I'm really happy with. So I'm just trying to start from answering the question. There's like, in this layer of the pipeline of delivering value, research has been a massive driver of that. And we've seen that we're unlocking value for people within research. I think, you know, when you're talking about our current business model, there's two sides of it, which is where's our current system? Where is it today? And where is it creating value? And then what's the value that that's creating for customers? And then where do I hope to bring the system so that we can get towards some of these things that we're talking about. So I don't know if it would change. I just think that I'm aware that there's a lot more work to do on our end if we're going to successfully accomplish that mission.
What do you think our current business model is more directed towards than, Nihal?
I feel like maybe that's where I struggle a bit still. I don't really know. And I guess that to me is like a sticking point for me sometimes, because it's like, I understand we have all these capabilities in the system, but then, you know, to Tyler's point, for example, one of our biggest implementations is in the healthcare space, right? But then is that the space where we see the most potentially short is that like our short-term target, or is that like the long game, right? Versus maybe on the more repurposing and you know, value add on the research side, maybe that's our more short term that helps us feed these longer term visions, and I'll also contribute to the long term vision. So for me, just based on I guess recent you know, recent customers we've gotten, like even just a couple of the sales calls we've had, it does really seem that we should lean into this research side, but then you run into this problem of, is the system robust enough to handle all these research needs, or is it sufficient to cater to a very specific part of that entire process? Where, you know, I feel like, for example, let's take a market research firm, for example. They might use us for the kind of acquisition and baseline analysis, right? So, you know, does that messaging and targeting, is it around building accurate interview data and like language data sets, right? Is that the value proposition? And then they feed that data that they've used our system to acquire into their, let's say, their larger software platforms that they use to do further coding and further analysis and generation of other assets from there. Like, obviously, I understand that's maybe our end goal, but I just don't know if we can, for example, we can't cater to all steps in the qualitative research process, for example, right? Like that's not where we're at currently, but we can cater to the kind of initial stage, and we cater to it very well, right? Like just based on some of the feedback we've received, it seems that people are finding a lot of value in that initial cleanup and collection process, and then obviously they use that data to further like do other things with it. So that's kind of where I lean right now. That's what I think. And obviously, once again, there's short term, medium term, and then long term vision for where the company should be and where we want to end up as well.
You know, and the research part is interesting. I had a firm reach out to me yesterday. I had a conversation with them, and they're actually responsible for, I would like, basically their value of their business has been building panels of like very, very defined people who then, for example, you come with a research initiative and you come to them and you say, hey, I need to target this audience and ask them these questions. So then they'll, they have, sort of built maybe, 10,000 people who fit this category. They answer the surveys for you. And then that's how you build up. That's where they're producing the values, by basically building these panels that are already pre-recruited that then answer questions for surveys. And they said, are you responsible for this part of the process, or you do manage any part of this process? And I was like, no. You guys, like, where do we come in during this process? And like where we've seen ourselves come in is as someone's gearing up for a research initiative, they are then coming to us because they know they're going to do, for example, 30, 40 interviews, whatever it is. They know that they're going to need to transcribe it, but then they're also looking for, hey, I want to do maybe even like, as you talked about, maybe the initial analysis layer of it to help me build some ideas for themes or topics that emerge that then I'm going to go down and do the deeper dive, or not even a deeper dive, but maybe the recommendations or the summary or the highlights that came out for all of those. Because generally what we're seeing in this research pipeline is, someone hires this firm is responsible for sourcing the people that they're doing interviews for. They do those interviews that are nicely structured. They record those, they transcribe them, they analyze them. And the final deliverable for this is a presentation that is given in person, or obviously now on Zoom call, that needs to be very compelling. And most likely throughout this process, the firm that originally hired this firm has spent quite a bit of money to hire that firm. The firm has paid, for example, us quite a bit of money to ingest that media and transcribe it up to 100%. So there's a lot of pressure riding through this process to produce insights that are valuable enough at the end state. And I don't know if you guys remember, we won't name any names, but there was a process that we went through for some research. And at the end, there was findings presented, and those findings were very underwhelming. So like, that's the part that we're actually trying to help people avoid, is underwhelming sort of insights that come out. And one of the things that I found when I was talking to one of the teams yesterday who does this process quite regularly is when it comes down to it, they are doing a lot of qualitative research. And for them, what does it come down to? It comes down to quotes, clips of media, and word clouds and bar charts. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally all it is in that font. And there's a lot of exposition over that. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of conversation that emerges from those, say, sharing that word cloud, and then that's a discussion point that then dives in deeper. But I think that along that process, what we've learned is there's a lot of broken points there. And then there's, I think, what you're alluding to, 𝗲𝗏, which is there's two sides of it, which is there are, I would say, my baseline, and these are all great companies, is maybe something like Otter baseline transcription. And then we're also seeing at a higher level something like maybe like NVivo, or like one of these really deep academic sort of scientific research engines. And within those are the two extremes of simple transcription, and then like manual coding and analysis that are a lot of times, bought by universities or large institutions that are installed locally on a computer, manual tagging, all that stuff. And in between, there's a gap that a lot of people are actually trying to operate and streamline their research work in, and are looking for an intuitive system, maybe with lower capacity. Maybe they're a smaller team, so they're helping to automate or shorten the amount of manual work in that process as much as possible. Just a couple of quick things I've noticed too: scientific and academic people, they tend to lean less on automation. They don't believe in the, they're very aware of the, the bias in AI systems and the problems that can emerge from, say, automated transcription and analysis. So they're more likely to get the budget up front to invest in fully human transcription, and then maybe a bunch of researchers to do the manual coding themselves. But there is this layer underneath where it's a smaller team, maybe in marketing or market research, who's trying to shorten that amount of work. And they'll take 80 to 95% accuracy because they're trying to speed the research to results delivered as quick as possible.
Yeah, because I feel like it once again speaks to an earlier conversation we had about verticalization versus just trying to keep growing horizontally, right? Where if you specialize on, let's say, a specific part of the of this workflow or these workflows, and just make it the best piece of the puzzle there is, then from there, use that growth to leverage any sort of like additional, you know, if you start going more horizontal again, then I feel like that's a much easier way, especially with the way or the complexity of some of the work that a lot of our clients do as well, where
Yeah.
yeah.
We've been asked, I mean, we've been asked for some pretty, not insane things, but like some things that could potentially spread the system way too thin if it's not spread that thin already. You know, like, again, I'll go back to this idea of a SOAP assessment. And when we were watching this NLP summit, I was like, you know, we have sort of the base categories of, for example, extracting out a number, you know, and so that number could refer to a dosage. But the systems that are tailored specifically for healthcare, they know the dosage. They also know the dosage of what, like with that dosage besides, say, the medicine, that's already in a pre-built, pre-labeled library that then they can say, okay, with this dosage and with this, that is representative of a relationship of this. And then even at the overall level, it's like, oh, if this person is this age, this demographic, and this dosage and this, most likely they are treating this illness. Like the amount of contextual information or like intelligent relationship linking based on, for example, a named entity recognition kit specifically applied to healthcare is, you know, is so deep, and the expertise that's been built into those systems is ridiculously intense. And like, again, that's something that, I know the question, and I think the challenge is if you have like people who are hustling or working hard or they're smart people, it's like you know, if you truly apply yourself, you can do anything. It's more about what you then choose to do. And you know, one thing that I continue to find over and over again is like, even along these gaps, or even along these sort of processes or applications of these technologies, we continue to see, you know, breakdowns in things. And so I was talking to you guys earlier this morning where I started to have, on a very small scale, but like conversations where I can basically predict where the problem is going to be. And that problem could be, hey, I've used Rev, or hey, I've used Otter, or you know, hey, I've used Atlas TI, that program's too complex. So I'm looking for a simpler version to help me do the initial thematic analysis of grouping. Like those patterns have started to emerge, but the core challenge, you know, comes back to me, which is like, there's too much information here and I need to be able to parse out the stuff that actually matters and is meaningful. And of course, we've maybe seen different ranges of what is meaningful, but in the end, the guy, you know, one of the guys I talked to yesterday, he's like, I'm doing 40 interviews and then I'm going to need to spend 250 hours to produce this presentation. And if you can help me drop even 5 hours, 20 hours, 50 hours, and still produce a presentation that at the end is compelling for our clients, then everyone wins in that situation. So that's where I'm trying to figure out. And one thing that I've continued to try to separate, which is, we're not this transcription company. The transcription is a method to get us to the results at the end. And I really do believe, based on some of the things that we've seen, is like the output methods of media clipping, audiograms, visualizations, and like identifying very compelling quotes or moments within that audio that can be shared out in a compelling, aesthetically pleasing way that creates sort of an impact when seen or heard or watched or listened. If we can do that on an automatic basis at a pretty high percentage of accuracy, we're creating a lot of value in the pipeline of our system. Cool. This is the challenge here, though, 𝗕𝗓𝗓. I won't end on this, but just for something that was really sometimes like, obviously I love pattern recognition but like, this is, maybe I told you this story before, but when I went to Burning Man in 2019, I went and watched all these, like some of the top researchers who were doing like psilocybin psychedelic research. And then, you know, for example, I've talked to a bunch of market research firms who are doing commercial research. In the end, you know, the assets that they showed for them to tell their story and for them to make a compelling piece was a quote, a clip of media, and then some data visualization. Like it was the exact same graphic or output at the end of that, whether that was commercial research talking about, you know, what boat you should buy, or, you know, a psychedelic therapy, which is changing people's lives. The input from a technical standpoint was no different. It's just the identification of those assets and allowing them to get those assets quicker so that they can make their final point. Does that make sense? Cool. I see heads nodded. That's good. Okay, Nihal, I guess do you want to continue on your journey of questioning? This is an interrogation here today. I love it.
I guess the next one is just this, because one thing we've been trying to do and trying to, add to our, I guess, marketing and sales flow as well is this whole idea of getting more customer feedback to improve the product, to potentially know why the product didn't work for them. In the case of users who maybe didn't onboard, why didn't they onboard? But I feel like we've had a hard time actually getting responses. So I feel like the two questions kind of go in hand, where one is, why is customer feedback potentially so hard to get? And the second part of that is, is there a better way, or is there a way for us to incentivize existing customers, but also past customers to just help us improve? And yeah.
I mean, I'll have a couple of theories on this. One of them is people are busy and value their time. And so, for us to just ask, hey, take, not even just like, because sometimes say we're asking for feedback, but we're not even giving them any structure to give that feedback, right? So it's a lot of thinking to be like, I want to write a paragraph of feedback here. Maybe one of the more valuable or worthwhile endeavors that we could produce them. Like when you look at one of the final metrics that people look at to measure, it's Net Promoter Score, and it's like either 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, right? And that's how you're gathering feedback, and it's one click. And obviously there's still a bit of thinking in that, but it's not the same as having to type out a full paragraph. I'd also say though, when we are truly serving a customer in a way that is valuable, like, I mean, you guys saw, Lauren, I'm not sure if you were CC'd in that email today, but we got an incredible piece of feedback today that was like multiple paragraphs long that the guy actually took out. He obviously took out time to use. I mean, first of all, he didn't use the system. This was a pain point that is in their workflow currently. And because we were actually helping solve that in some ways, he was willing to give us very helpful feedback and in-depth feedback. So I think when we're not getting feedback, it's that these are not the right customers, not that they're not the right customers, but like we haven't adequately solved the problem. And I think it also, comes back to this idea of maybe say product market fit, where it's like they came in with an idea and the product didn't fit that problem that they were having. And so it's not worthwhile for their time to even, leave feedback. It was just the wrong thing. It's like when you walk into a store, or maybe this is more examples, like when you walk into a club. I don't do this anymore, but I used to. And it's just like a bad vibe. You know what I mean? It's just like not the vibe you were looking for. You go in, you look and like, oh, okay, I'm out of here. And on the way, out, no one's asking you, why are you leaving this club? And if you did, it's just like, it's not for me. This is not the right spot to be. So I think there's some of that going on. A couple quick things. Sorry, I know I'm talking about here, but it's like also we've seen more feedback when people actually make an investment in the product. So if you pay for something, obviously there's a little bit more buy-in, and if you're paying for it, then you're willing to give feedback to improve it because there's a cost to it. So I think that makes sense. It's hard to get feedback when someone does a free trial and uploads something for 60 minutes, and for us to try to follow up with them and say, hey, and most likely these were just a browser or a window shopper just testing things out and not necessarily doing it. And a couple last things I'll say is, there's a couple of things that we know we want to improve in the system. One of the feedbacks that we got a couple of days ago was that the transcription comes back slower than other systems. And that's because some of the analysis is happening. So speed could be a big factor in that. And, I think while sometimes we don't get feedback, I think we're also pretty smart, aware people. So we know a lot of the problems that occur in the system that create clunkiness or things. And like, Nihal and I wrote out basically what we called friction points in the app the other day, but it was basically, what do we hate about the app? And it was pretty easy to generate. I think there was 30, 40 points in there within 10 minutes. So I think there's a level of awareness for us that we know without even necessarily needing feedback that this is causing problems.
Maybe it's just like the way you ask for feedback too. Like you just say the word feedback, doesn't really like elicit any sort of thought. But like if you want someone to complain, no one's going to hold back their complaints, or even like what they think is doing good. I feel like that's going to require more thought, because like what is good really? Like good is, getting the job done. It's not like going above and beyond, which is kind of difficult to do when it comes to transcription. But anyways, when was like the last time you guys like ever gave feedback to any other products you're using? And like, did they ask for the feedback? Were you just, a good Samaritan? You went out of your way to give the feedback? Like I can rarely recall ever, anything I've ever used really saying anything, one way or the other about it.
To me, it depends on like if they caused me enough pain that I gave feedback, or if the incentive was strong enough to actually respond, right? So I think the one time I gave feedback was like Asana. I mean, granted, big company, so they have disposable money, but they're like, give us 20 minutes of your time and we'll give you $100 Amazon gift card, right? That was one time I can think of. The other time was I bought like this exercise equipment, and they basically, because there was a delay to it, they gave me an extended free trial of their like accompanying app, but then the app was set to auto renew, and so I was just like, hey, that's kind of scummy, right? Like at least send out like your trial is about to expire, like make sure blah blah blah, because you did need to enter your card details. That was the other feedback I gave, where it was like, if you're not going to refund people, at least provide them with advance notice that their trial's about to expire. And I guess the third time I gave feedback was for like swag, right? Like a shirt or like stickers. But these are for like, I guess more, the swag stuff was more on the consumer side, right? So those are 3 instances I can think of. But yeah.
But like every time where you weren't getting anything out of it?
Very rarely. I mean, I guess in the case of the exercise equipment, like there's no guarantee of me getting anything. I kind of just pulled a bit of a Karen, right? Because I'm like,
it was more like venting. So you kind of got something out of it by giving
exactly
a vent over.
Exactly. So the other time actually no, one time I did give feedback to a Sas product. Like it was a basically to connect various APIs in Google Sheets, and that one was just because the actual end use case, like I was interested in a useful product at the end of the day. So by providing feedback, the hope was that this product would improve enough to be something that I could use, right? But it was also a freemium product, so the kind of I didn't have any financial tie-ins to the product either. So
I'll go for 2 examples for myself, which was Rand Fishkin, who created Moz, has a new product called 𝗬𝗏, and they were actually struggling with 𝗬𝗏, and so he actually sent out a personal email to all the users who had signed up and asked for feedback, and he said, even give me 1 word. And I love Rand Fishkin. Like that's like one of my heroes. And I didn't give him feedback. It's still a starred email in my, it's because someone like I legitimately care about and has made my life better. And I'm sorry, Rand. I owe you some feedback on that. But like, and then the other one was a company called MarsView that does some really cool sort of conversation analysis kind of stuff too, very similar to what we do. And on their site, there's a button where you can do a sample of audio and see how the analysis works. And I hit the play button, and something in the way that they set up that code makes there's no limiter on the audio volume. And I had these headphones on, and I literally like blew my eardrums out. Like I had a headache for the entire night after that. And I was just like, I need to tell them because I'm pissed off that they hurt my ears, and also that this could happen to other people. But then I went to sleep, I woke up in the morning, and I never sent that feedback, So it's like how even fleeting a pain point is that you're going to follow up like on that feedback, and then just a couple of like interesting attempts at this, right? Like, so when I send out an email and I'm asking for feedback, like what have we tried? And I don't know, Neil, if you have any thoughts or any other attempts that you've sort of tried, or just like in general, but like sometimes I ask like, you know, did you have any issues or what the problem is? Sometimes I'll ask like, what's on your wish list? Sometimes it's like, you know, give me one feature that you want. Other times it's like, you know, if we know that they're going to not like the application, it's like, will you, you know, if you have any feedback, let us know so we can help. You know, sometimes I'll say good people like you, people like you, like sort of have tried these little different approaches at messaging, or flipping like what the problem was, like how, you know, how could we help this solve the problem you originally came in to solve, or where did it fall short? Like trying to basically sort of rejig this message, or basically the ask, which is, hey, just give us a piece of feedback so we can make the system better for you and for others. And like you said, it's a surprisingly hard thing. And as I've talked to more market researchers, or just researchers in general who are going through the recruitment journey, one of the things they have said is the hardest thing is actually getting good data, which is, we saw it in our own Speak app when a research team went through our system and they offered an incentive. I think it was like $60 for a 45-minute conversation. There were some people who were like actual people who cared about us and jumped on that call and gave us feedback. And then there were some people who had signed up and saw the opportunity to make $60 and like booked in. And like the one person said they got on the call with them, and it's like that person barely even knew what the app was. They just wanted the $60. So that's not worthwhile either. So you need to incentivize, but you can't incentivize not necessarily poor actors, but people who don't have any experience or with, for example, what you're building, and that aren't going to actually provide value in the feedback. And then one last thing was like that, I've been reading some stuff around research where it's like, research is not even sometimes effective because people are giving different answers than they were given a real world scenario. So, you know, the same idea of like, not placebo effect, but when you measure something, then it's modified, because if they're aware of measuring, there's an awareness of that and it changes the response that you would give. And so that's another also thing that you have to think about when you're doing any research at all, and how honest, or how do you filter up your own bias, or even maybe the person who's participating in the research is unintended bias because they know you're in a research situation. Cool. Okay. Overall, like one thing that, I know that, I mean, I learned from you, and, something that was just so interesting, like, because I mean, you've met me, so it's like, sort of we'll just jump into things, but then I saw your sort of research process for doing content creation. You know what I mean? Like when I get inspired, I'll just write, and I'll do a simple type into like SEMrush and see like, oh, how could I optimize the title, or what are some additional keywords I can add into this to, help try to make it successful. But I would see you do like 15, 20 hours of research to then decide what content needs to create, or where the opportunities were, and before you actually move forward to execute. And that's another thing that's just, I thought was really interesting in this process, is just like research, or capturing and understanding of information is such a crucial part of everything we do in our lives. And, it is something I'm really passionate about. I was, I was a university student, and we wrote essays and did like, this was part of the life that you had to do. And so it is something I really, truly love. And, I like to participate, but if we only help in the research part and we don't necessarily help with the output piece, then we're not going to be able to be a vendor or a platform that delivers the value that people, we're just going to be lost in that thing. And I just, one part of that was like, people will pay for a tool, but true buy-in comes from a solution. So how can we be a solution versus a tool? And I think that's something that we're getting closer to, especially for specific use cases, but I still think there is quite a bit of work to do in that regard. And yeah, just one other thing I saw this week, which was Descript. So I love Descript. Love their team. The guy, Andrew there started Groupon. He's a smart person, and I really love what they're doing. Now, am I really passionate about video editing? Not necessarily, but it's a very painful problem that people spend hours and hours on. And what I saw, we're talking about this idea of like getting feedback. And I would say the script is getting, the level of feedback they're getting from their users is insane, because a lot of times, like, it's not necessarily, again, maybe positive, but it's like the inklings of the system that people have dreamed about are there. And the fact that the feedback comes from it being like close, but not close enough, or so close that they feel like if they can give this feedback and help bridge this small gap, that it becomes the true thing that solved this, ethereal pain point of video editing and production and creation. And, I just think it speaks to where we got the feedback from, really valuable feedback from today in that email, was someone who would use the system for hours, on end with a team. And that's the same thing that the script is doing, because inherently, if you're editing a video and that video is an hour long, you're going to be spending 2 to 3 hours editing that video. So you're intimately using the platform, and you're finding little problem areas along the entire path. And you're going to have pain points that you're going to want to communicate to someone along the way. So just an interesting thing that I saw from that sort of feedback loop that they're now building in with like a larger customer base who are not paying for it and are doing a very painful activity, which is video editing, which I'm not sure if you guys have done, but is a horrible task. So yeah.
Didn't the script have some sort of video event recently where they're exploring like the new features or something like that?
Yep. Yeah, it was cool. It was great. There was about 300 people watching. It was funny at the start, the guy had, the CEO had like a golf ball, like a nice display, and it just collapsed right before. So it's funny, like there's these amazing companies, I forget how much money they've raised, 25, 50 billion or something. And it's just like, it comes down to, it's just a guy sitting in a room, with a fragile, art stand behind him. And like, just, it's hilarious to see, we're all human. We're all just trying to do our best to do it. So he recovered from it, and it was a great conference. And they're doing some insane stuff with the technology. And I think it's something I strive to be, not necessarily Descript in general, but if you look at some of the feedback on it, it's like a lot of people are wrestling with AI and sort of technology and taking some of these very abstract concepts or like possible applications and truly applying it to a use case or a problem in a viable sort of productized way. Like that's still a challenge across the entire market and space. Like we're in sort of this Gartner hype cycle of where you can apply AI. Natural language processing, and I would say speech to text is on the more practical part of it now, but there's still a lot of high level conceptual work that hasn't led to maybe the outcomes that people are looking for. And we've seen a lot of failures in this application of AI and sort of innovative technology that whereas the scripts sort of persevered and actually built a product around this, and they've been very good with that. And it's allowed them to do pretty crazy innovation, but as long as they've kept that mission intact, it's helped them, fulfill the needs of their customers. And that's why they've, I think, seen the growth that they've seen.
Is there any conferences that you would want to be a part of, or do you think there's a possibility of putting on our own Speak conference in the future?
I think it would be similar to this, where 3 of us are here. No, I'm just kidding. But it's a really interesting approach that they did. Like we did the first, I don't know if you remember Demo Day. I remember, you probably do remember, because you had a very late night, and it was. I mean, that was a fun thing to do. That was in the pandemic before the world went virtual, but we had a pretty engaged audience in that, and that led to a lot of good stuff after that. I think for us, and I think where 𝗏𝗏 alludes to sometimes, which is, say we put on an event, who shows up to that event? You know what I mean? Are they are they marketers? Are they researchers? Are they psychedelic enthusiasts? Are they biohackers? You know what I mean? Like, who are the people who actually show up to that event? And we do have a very eclectic group of followers and supporters who sort of see the bridge. Like, there's a lot of data scientists and NLP people, and I would say sort of, an interesting subset of people who love what we're doing. But then I think there's a lot of other people who are just sort of confused. I think that would create difficulty. And I think that's, again, why 𝗏𝗏 continues to sort of drill down on the messaging. Or if it's only one customer, great, other customers can float in and use the system, but truly the system is only meant for, this. And if you like it in its current state, good, but we're not building this for you, can continue on kind of thing. I think if you have an event after you say you raise a bunch of money and publish all the stuff on TechCrunch and all that, then you get more people showing up just because of the hype. But I think that's not necessarily a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's nice. You see that people sort of capitalize on the new attention of it. I know, Canva, I look at recently, Canva had a massive raise and became one of the most valued private companies in the world. And now I can't stop seeing Canva everywhere. It just built an even larger awareness of it. And so very successful in many ways, how they executed on a fundraise and actually used it to build better marketing and leverage across everything. Okay, well, so the 10th, we're already at 149. Anything that you guys want to talk about? A little later today.
Yeah, I mean, any Thanksgiving plans?
Back home in London, yeah.
Sorry?
Just family stuff, yeah. Are you free Monday, Tyler?
I'm gonna go back on Sunday morning.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's a holiday. It's a holiday, right? So Monday, everyone's off. So this is short, one of my most hated things in life is a short week. So next week, I'm really very frustrated on Tuesday when you see me. It's fun.
Don't look
What-
at it
what
as
happens-
a short week, it's
yeah.
a long weekend.
Exactly. What happens when we switch to a 4-day work week? What happens then?
It's never gonna happen. I'm just I'm kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I do. It's actually nothing to do with people around me. It's actually more of an internal clock or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even this, so I'm doing this habit tracking right now. So I use a Google Sheet, then I push it to Data Studio. I wonder if I have the visualization now. See if I can show you this quickly. But when the routine gets out of loop, a lot of things then sort of suffer. It's not gonna come to Data Studio. So it's just like a reset or a mental thing. I should be able to persevere. I'm trying to give myself a little bit of chaos here in my life by going to Miami. So I'm going to go to Miami in November here, and trying to also sustain and retain some of the best people I've seen who have been very successful. One of them I'll never forget meeting. His name's 𝗕liche, and he's the guy who created 𝗕𝗏𝗏. And he would travel extensively, obviously for work. He would have to go to China and Japan, whatever, you know what I mean? And he said no matter where he was, he would operate like he was in Eastern Standard Time. And he worked out 7 days a week, drank 8 cups of water, whatever, you know what I mean? The level of rigor in his life to maintain at such a high level of operational efficiency and performance was mind-blowing. And he looked like Superman, so it was obviously working. How about you, Neil?
Anything specific? No, probably take advantage of the last warmth we have. Maybe go on a couple hikes over the weekend, couple hikes, maybe 1 or 2. Anything else? I see. We don't normally celebrate Thanksgiving in my household, but I was thinking about it might actually be too late now. But if any restaurant or something has those Thanksgiving kits, maybe picking up one of those and giving it a go. But I feel like I might be late for that because I totally forgot that next week's Thanksgiving. So I realized yesterday. So.
You'll get it. I think you can get it. I think you can figure it. If not, you can do what many people do and just go to 𝗕cie
Yeah, I absolutely hate 𝗕cie.
I know. I don't know who likes it, but yeah.
That's why they give you so much gravy, so you don't realize how dry their chicken is.
I'm trying to think anything else. From this, it's interesting. Did this monthly report this week, and it's always this, such an interesting feedback loop, and people who sort of message you and just sort of reconnect and talk on updates and all that stuff. So it always, every single time I hit send on that, I feel like I hate myself. But I like how painful this is. You just feel very exposed and vulnerable. You know what I mean? And then it always leads to the opposite, or if not, or not necessarily. It's just people will say, oh shit, you guys are making a ton of progress. And then it looks like you could use help here. I can help here, or I can connect you with someone to help here. And so I think that there is, you know, again, even though it's small, you know, group of people, it's like there's a very supportive group out there who wants to see us succeed. And so, you know, the more we sort of like, I guess that's one thing, and that's maybe one thing, you know, maybe Thanksgiving, you know, has a lesson around it, which is just like, there's a lot of people who care. There's a lot of people you have to be grateful for. There's also a lot of people who help, and it's up to you to sort of reach out and ask, and hopefully, you know, when you ask someone for help and they give it to you, that goodness will somehow be transferred either back to them directly or to someone else in life. And that's generally, you know, what I see from people is just a pattern of goodness and people who want to help out. And you know, I'm very grateful for people who are maybe a little bit ahead of our journey, like slightly above, farther beyond, or middle of the road beyond, or way beyond, experienced, and all of them bring their own insights, and all of them are always, you know, almost always happy to hop on a call, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and say, here's what I did when I faced this or faced that. And I know if someone asks me, generally, you know, if I'm further along than someone objectively, subjectively, what that is, I'm happy to do the same. So yeah, we got a good to be surrounded by helpful people, including you guys. So I'm thankful for that.
People are always happy to help out and work with you when they see that you're working too. It's like
Yeah.
The analogy of if someone sees you asking for help on the side of a road, they're just going to keep on driving. But if they see you, you know, working by yourself and struggling, they'll help you out.
Interesting. Okay, I'll do that next time I crash my car. Okay, guys, any last things before we sign off for the weekend? Good. Okay.
Just, be thankful for this happy life and this beautiful weather and good times with the family.
Beautiful.
I agree.
Okay, we'll end it on that. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
See you later.